G'day golfers. Ever found yourself redirecting blame and making excuses after having an absolute shocker on a golf course? I know that I have. Range was closed, I was a little cold, didn't warm up, I hit it in those 3 old divots. Then we have the podcast for you. We focus on how to fundamentally own your swing. Strike it pure and consistently shoot in the 70s. Be it if you're a weekend hack, retired and playing daily, a school phenom or a tour professional. We present and discuss facts and physics pertaining to golf, trying to keep our ego and opinion at bay. We dispel myths such as keep your head down, bend your knees, or my all-time favourite, game improvement irons. So stop drinking that mythical Kool-Aid and have a sip of ours. I think you'll find it both inspiring and refreshing. I'm Scott Young, founder of Swing, PGA professional and ex-tour player. And together with physical therapist Dr. Sean Joyce, welcome to Pivot the Path. G'day golfers. Good morning. SJ, how are you, sir?
Good morning, everybody. How's it going today, Scotty?
We got in at 18
right
degrees.
Yeah. I mean, we're in the thick of it here. You shouldn't expect anything different in New York, so.
Mate, what's the scooter index? What when you get out of the apartment and you go, oh, I just can't scooter today. Do we have an index? Is
I've
it
not
like
hit
10?
that point. Usually if I get on it, it means I need to get where I'm going, so there's no turning back.
Random thought.
Yeah.
One of our members said that they don't operate below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. He works at a company that will remain nameless. He works in battery-based business.
Okay.
And he did say only 2 weeks ago they don't work sub 20 degrees Fahrenheit.
I mean, I've had that thing out in less than 20 degrees.
All right, so
for
that's
sure.
that theory. That's that.
Maybe, but it sits in my apartment. It's nice and warm.
So the apartment's warm. Interesting.
Yeah. And then I think once I get it going out there, it probably
warms up anyway.
creates enough heat that I've gotten away with it.
Yeah. How's your week? What's happening?
Good, running around, man. We're busy in here. Everyone's really
cranking.
gearing up for the springtime and nicer weather. So it's fun. Place has a little bit
I
of
have
buzz.
not stretched my too much information, everybody, but I have not stretched my hamstrings in the shower for 4 weeks now.
Good.
Has had no impact on my brain goes, but I should do that because that's what I've
Just
always
habit.
done.
Yeah.
And I haven't done it since about a month.
Yeah.
And I just warm up and crank away at inside path 6, phase 2 without even a warm up. So mate,
that's
thank you.
perfect. But it's just one of those things when you're in the habit of it, and it does kind of sometimes feel good to stretch. So you're like, oh, well, I should keep doing that. But in some cases, it's doing you a disservice.
You know what? That's exactly right. And I want to stretch because that's what I've done for 30 years.
Yeah,
and it's
hard
funny.
habit
I'm
to
like,
break.
no. Sean's like, don't. News from the fairways. So it's a funny little time in golf, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got no DP Tour.
Nope.
We've got no LPGA Tour.
Nope.
And Liv's got their, restricted schedule. So we literally only have PGA Tour and a couple of others in different parts of the world. PGA Tour, we had Hideki Matsuyama.
Oh, he
God,
went
I love him.
nuts. He went absolutely nuts on the
So
back
good.
nine. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I had fun watching it. We had the front nine. Luke List was going crazy, making birdies. He fell off on the back nine, but then Hideki just took over. It was sweet.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I obviously we got to talk about the elephant in the room being the whole Genesis Tiger Sunday Red.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who was the naming right individual sponsor with Genesis, shoots even par, and was interviewed okay, and then pulls out because of back spasm, because of pneumonia, because
I think it's influenza.
I
don't know.
Who
I
knows?
think we just need some new heroes.
Yeah, we need some new heroes. And Hideki was just superb. I just did a quick bit of math last night in prep. So I totaled the top 23 players. They all shot 2 under average.
Okay.
And then Hideki
on each day?
No, just the last day. The last
Okay.
day. And then he's come in at 9 under, which
ballistic.
we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think the PGA Tour have softened the courses to improve the scores, right? To compete with Liv saying our golfers are better because they're shooting lower.
Yeah.
I, as a golf nut, want them to be like on Sunday where everyone's having roughly 1 or 2 under average. Hideki goes, no, slam down 9 under. I'll take it and run. Thanks very much. I love that. That's what I want to watch golf for.
It was fun to watch because the final group, Schauffele and Cantley, just couldn't get it going all day. And not much happening
Which
there.
is golf, right?
Yeah.
Some days you just can't get it going.
And, which is fine. But then Hideki was like, I got some fireworks for you guys.
I just love that.
He just lit it up.
He just lit
He's
it up.
hitting those shots where, like, you just love to see it happen. Where you look at him, you're like, that's a pro golfer.
Yeah, it was, and that's what I love watching golf for. So I usually watch, because I'm usually teaching all day Sunday. I mean, it's on. We've got 2 TVs here, but I usually watch it more closely on a Monday morning. And that's why I love watching golf. You've got this guy who's like, no, everyone's kind of faltering, even par 1 under, and then he just lays it down.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Just says, I'm feeling it today.
And there's a really nice moment after he won and the ceremony. His caddy sat down on the putting green, where on the putting green at the golf course, you can watch 18 coming up and you can watch 10 hit off. That's where a really good spectator.
Yeah, yeah.
And he just sat there, and it was, I believe it wasn't scripted, and they just had the camera on him. And I think it was just a bit of an aha moment of, wow, that was intense.
Yeah, yeah. And it's such a beautiful course too. I like watching that tournament just because I think the course is so awesome.
Yeah, we'll have to get out there.
Have you ever played there?
I've hardly been to LA. I've been to LA for Rosie's, the boss's hens night for 2 days. That's all. I haven't been to LA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought maybe you'd played it, but
no.
There was we were talking last week about more mic'd up moments. And on Saturday I was watching, and they had Mackenzie Hughes mic'd up for a hole. He was on the par 3, I think on the back 9. And it was just quite interesting, just to see him actually in the middle of his round, just walking down the fairway, talking about, the state of golf a little bit. And he's, like we've been talking, a little disappointed in where it's at and so many changes.
He said that. Interesting.
Yeah. He was pretty honest about things, which I thought was interesting. And then he started talking a lot too about just the type of grass they have there, the Kikuyu, whatever it's called.
Full on.
Yeah. And so, and he had actually, I think 2 or 3 times in this tournament chipped in.
Yeah.
I think he was.
You can get a lot of spin off Kikuyu.
Yeah. So he was talking about, his technique and the different grass, how it really suits it. And I think that hole or the next hole, he got up to his ball. He had just missed the green. He chips in.
Yeah.
It was awesome. But I was thinking about it, and we talk a lot about bounces and wedges. And when you get out to the course, if you're actually playing, assess the grass first. But did you find a type of grass or maybe a part of the world where like your chipping was the best?
So let's back it up a little bit. So Kikuyu is a matted grass that basically grows like if you can picture something like a scrub for your kitchen, the steel wool.
Yeah.
That's what Kikuyu is.
So
it's a bit of matted grass, whereas Cooch, Santa Ana Cooch and lots of Cooch strains is a more bladed grass that has grain.
Okay.
So Kikuyu doesn't have grain per se.
Yeah.
It's basically just a thick mat. Now, the upside is that it doesn't have grain. The downside is the club gets stuck really quickly.
Okay.
And you can't hit chip and runs. So when you hit a ball into a Kikuyu, it pops up.
Uh-huh.
When you're playing Cooch, Santa Ana, which is generally in Australia, the private golf courses will generally have Cooch because it's more expensive and harder to maintain.
Okay.
Kikuyu is generally all the public golf courses.
I see.
So, but obviously at Riviera, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So Cooch, you can't play chip and runs. You've got to fly everything. But as the club hits the ball and the Kikuyu, it generates a lot of spin. So you can hit these wicked little spinny shots out of it.
Okay.
So you've got to approach it really differently.
Yeah. So would you ever playing tournaments based on the grass change your technique?
Absolutely. You have to. Yeah, absolutely. And even more so, definitely for the US, northern guys can't chip down south. So most people who go down south with Cooch and the way it has grain, and grain, ladies and gentlemen, is basically how the blade of the grass shapes to the sun.
Yeah.
If you've never played in grainy grass, you don't know how to play it. You don't know how to read it.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I wouldn't say you change the bounce per se, although you probably could. You change ball position. So if you think where your sternum is, where your nose and chin are, if you're playing Kikuyu, the club gets stuck and you can't play that bump and run because the ball pops up.
Yeah.
So getting back to impact, in Kikuyu, you can't really have too much ball in front of sternum to hit the ground first, unless you really want to play that flipper.
Okay.
So for a golf professional, Kikuyu is super easy. You can play spin shots out of anything. You just
play kind of ball first?
No, you'd go the other way. You can play ground first and play like a bunker shot everywhere. And it just stops dead.
Oh,
but you've
interesting.
really got to know how to play that. It's easy. You just
Yeah,
got to know how to do it. So getting back to Victor Hovland, he's
Mhm.
created that spin shot, and
Yeah.
that's basically a heavy Kikuyu. You can play that off Kikuyu because the ball sits up in Kikuyu. So sometimes the ball might sit down in Cooch or in on tour events. Kikuyu, it always sits up.
Okay.
So you can always just hit this nutty little spinner.
You can get under
And
it a
maybe, actually, that's an interesting point you said. Maybe they chip in more because you can get so much leverage on the golf ball. But you got to be very wristy.
Yeah. Okay. So you just have to know what you're
You just
working
have
with.
to know what you're working on.
And I wonder, you think sometimes, at least in PGA, they kind of have swings where they're out in the West Coast in California, then they're down in Texas, then they're down in Florida. They're in different parts of the season, and I'm sure there's certain places, certain types of grass where players are just a bit more suited to.
I've played down in Austin, and ACC is very coochy, right? Very grainy.
Okay.
And if you're hitting into the grain, which means the blade is against the direction of the club, you've really got to know that. And so you can flub a lot of chip shots, not from poor technique, but poor understanding of how the grass interacts with the club. Get back to last week at Riviera, and I didn't know it was Kikuyu, to be honest, which I grew up in a beautiful golf course, shout out Paddo's, at Avondale, which is Santa Ana Cooch, just amazing. But in winter, it lays dormant, so it actually goes poo browns. Whereas Kikuyu is a blade that's always hyperescent green. And so Kikuyu, again, back to Australia, it just means the public courses who don't have the revenue in their greenskeeping budget, they don't have to look after it as much. They don't have to water it as much. It's a bit more resilient under stress.
Okay.
And the ball sits up, so you can chip off it all day long.
Yeah. Quite interesting.
Yeah, it's
Did you
fascinating.
have some, I guess, grass training in PGA when you're coming through
this is the bizarre thing. I was down, so I can picture it. I flew in to the US for the first time in, I think, 2004, and I was coming to play tour school. And I went into Orange County National, where I ended up working with Sean Foley. Shauno, shout out. We spoke just before the PGA show, just a beautiful dude, good guy. And I remember going to Orange County National, which we'll get to. It's the practice circumference at Orange County National, from memory, was 3 miles.
Oh my god.
This thing was humongous.
That's amazing.
And it had Santa Ana Cooch, but then it had parts of different types of Florida grass.
That's cool.
Which I'd never seen. I remember stubbing chips thinking,
like, whoa,
what's going on?
Yeah.
But once you get used to how that grass lays,
yeah,
and looking in the hole, you can see where the grain of the green.
Yeah.
Once you get it, you get it. So getting back to Florida, if you've got if you just look at a circle on a green, if you're about 30 yards up and you're walking up to a green, try and look in the direction of the fairway. And then if you've got time, quickly bolt and look 90 degrees at the green, and you'll see a different color.
Yeah.
And then once you get, and it'll take you just a second, but once you get the understanding of how the colors change in grain, chipping's super easy. So if I'm chipping down grain, right, then I've got to let that ball run out. So to answer your question, and in a long-winded way, as sometimes I do.
That's all right.
The first couple of years I was in the US, coming from Australia, we didn't have that grainy grass. Up far north Queensland we did, but I didn't play a ton up in big events up there. You'd have to chip a shot, and if you were down grain, i.e. the blade is running away from you, the ball would literally roll out 8 feet past.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. If I'm chipping into the grain, it would stop dead. And did I get any training? No, you just figure it out.
Yeah.
You'd hit a chip shot and you'd be like, oh, that's money. And then you'd be 8 foot past.
Like,
and you'd be like, whoa, that was weird.
Yeah. Oh, quite interesting. So a little bit of trial by fire.
Trial by fire.
I don't know.
Anyway, someone who's from like Keegan Bradley, anyone who's from Northeast tour player, they're going to take just a little bit of time getting used to down south. Yeah. Because that grain is huge.
Yeah. Totally different.
It was at Stream Song. Very grainy.
Very grainy.
Very grainy. Yeah. So
I think on tour, when you're watching on TV, you can often see, certain camera angles, the greens and a darker spot over here,
100%.
Lighter there, more shiny.
100%.
Like the grain is even visible on TV.
So if you're not quite sure how this moves, and it basically, I think anywhere south of like Virginia, so we're just north of Virginia, anywhere south of Virginia, North Carolina is going to have more grain.
Yeah.
Florida, obviously, it's crazy. So if I look at my coffee mucker here, and I've got half raggledy and half shiny.
Yeah.
The Raggledy side is the way the grain is facing.
Yeah.
So if I'm 50 yards in front of my coffee mug and the Raggledy edge is towards me, that means the grain's running towards me.
Yeah, gotcha.
So as I look at the grain and the green, it's going to be really dark. But if I was to walk on the backside of the coffee mug, that would be super shiny.
Yeah,
very light in color.
So you see the backside of the grass, more reflection.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Try and work backwards, guys. If you're not sure on how to read grain, go up to the hole first, find the Raggledy. It's usually about a quarter of a circumference. And that will be the way the grain is lying. And then take 10 steps back and just look at the green.
Yeah.
The grass will always be a light green towards the direction of the grain, meaning the way the ball will roll out.
Yeah, yeah.
The ball always rolls further down grain because the blade is lying down of the grass.
Yeah, makes sense.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So Kikuyu is less grainy, but it's really catchy.
Yeah.
It's shit. I don't like chipping out of Kikuyu because it's so, as a guy who brought up playing chip and runs, I can't play chip and runs.
Yeah.
So I've got to fly everything.
Change your game a little bit.
So I'm not a spinny chipper. Matty Anderson, I haven't seen Matty in 20 years. Matty was on NGA Hooters tour with us, and he was also on Nationwide. Matty and Matt Anderson and Bull Cameron Smith. Those guys won the NCAA up at Minnesota when I first got to the US. So they would have won the NCAA in like, wikis don't quote me, like 06, 07.
Okay, yeah.
Matt Anderson he's up there with Tiger. He is one of the best short games I've ever seen, but he was flippy.
Yeah.
He used to wrist everything. Oh my God. He'd spin it like I've never seen. So he would love Kikuyu.
Yeah, makes sense.
Whereas to me, I like playing bump and runs.
Okay.
So just
preference.
So getting back on that. So if I was playing back on tour, I would actually plan my tournament schedule around grasses like that. I wouldn't be comfortable on a Riviera.
And where you're going to best chance of playing well.
But I'll go play in British Open all day long, all day.
Yeah, yeah.
So
that's quite interesting. And you wonder now, I mean, if you think that way, I'm sure there's a lot of players too who will pick and choose tournaments for many reasons, but that's definitely a big thing to consider. Yeah,
I've got a chipping video of Xander Schauffele that I've been working on my spinny shot. Just again, at the Institute of Sport back home, we weren't allowed to play that spinny. Well, it was not encouraged to play that spinny wristy shot.
Yeah, yeah.
And I teach that way. I believe in that 1,000%. But it's nice to be able to play that. And I've got a video of Xander Schauffele in his backyard hitting this spinny shot from about 20 yards.
Yeah.
He's backing the ball
pulling
up.
it back.
And I'm like, damn. And it's not synthetic grass.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's still insane.
Yeah.
So I would plan my way around, off non-Kikuyu.
Yeah. Oh, that makes a bit of sense.
British Open. We're going to get to Ireland too, dude.
Yeah.
Because Ireland, you can hit an 8-iron from 150 yards.
Really?
I love that.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's
like we were talking about when we unfortunately missed out on the Pebble Beach last round of the Pro-Am, but you want to see some crazy shots into the wind on
so that's Kikuyu.
That sort of deal.
Pebbles Kikuyu.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
so different. I mean, and those tournaments are back to back. I know Players is coming up in just a few weeks.
Yeah,
it's 3 weeks of the Players.
So Players, I'm not sure what grass. I would have thought being a little more Blue Monster, I would have thought that's probably Kikuyu too, to be honest.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. And then Will Zalatoris, getting back to the Tiger all for 10 seconds, we got to move on. Like it's old news. Will Zalatoris, here's a guy who's had back surgery, young. I don't think it's widely known, but he lost a family member on Thursday. He then comes second, has a hole-in-one on the Friday.
Yeah.
And then breaks down on Sunday night when they ask him about it. Now, to me, that's a story.
Yeah.
Like, move on from Tiger. It's full of bullshit. Let's focus on the Will Zalatoris.
Yeah, he's been through a lot.
He's been through a lot.
It was awesome to see him out there playing well. I like watching him play because he moves the ball a lot.
Yeah.
Left to right, right to left. And you got a couple funny mic'd up moments too. I mean,
where
I
he hit it in the bunker.
And he's like, every time.
Every goddamn time.
Yeah. So, but like you said, great story. I mean, if he stays healthy, he'll be around playing golf a long time.
What is he, 20?
He's young.
Yeah, 25.
Yeah. So,
and then Jordan, actually, I don't know what happened there. I'm putting you on the spot. So he signed an incorrect card or something happened.
Yeah. Apparently he just didn't match up numbers, and so he's disqualified.
So how we do it, I'm, again, not sure if guys know, we've got a scorecard, and then you've got literally just a normal scorecard. And then here's our book. and then you've got a perforated bottom. And so you write your number, and I'm scoring you, and I write my number, and then you just take off the perforated, and then you give me your card, and then you match what you have to how you scored me.
Yeah.
I didn't look into it, but obviously he got DQ'd for doing something wrong.
I think it's just an honest mistake.
Yeah.
Just probably one number off, something like that.
Now there's a guy who's got some really good hands. So I would imagine Jordan loves his Kikuyu.
Yeah.
Right? And getting back to the pitch shot he played at the Masters on 13, if you remember, he dunked it in the water on 12 when he was leading about 7 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
And then he made like 11 or whatever he did.
Yeah.
As you walk off 13T, everyone's walking up the 13th green. So now the grass is laying towards the direction of the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
But if you remember, Jordan's pitching to the 12th green into the grain, and he flubbed it twice.
Okay.
That's because you're playing into the grain of the grass.
Yeah.
So Augusta's very grainy in that way, not by virtue of the grass itself, but by being trodden on.
Okay. And just,
right?
Yeah, being walked all over. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's a lot to consider, your technique as well as how far the ball's going to roll out, how far you got to fly it.
So getting back to, processes, and this is why I know swing's a little different to a lot of the other performance centers. We talk about this. So anytime you have a practice swing, make sure you've got a high bounce club. If you feel that grass grab, whether it's a Kikuyu or a grain, or whether it's you're walking off Ferry Point where we play, always the back of Ferry Point 1 is always trodden as everyone walks to the second green.
Yeah.
If you're having a practice swing and you feel that, move the ball back.
Okay.
Move it to the right-hand side of your back ankle, and you'll take the grain out of play.
Yeah.
Now you'll de-loft the club, and you'll have the face a little open, but, take it
Yeah, and that's, like we said, the whole point talking about this is how do people take this to the course?
Yeah.
Like you said, get out there and hit some chips and really assess where you're at.
When are we playing next, SJ?
We got to figure that out. It's a big issue right now.
It was 20 degrees in the car today. Wind was, it was cold.
Too cold now. But I think there's, in March, there's a couple 60-degree days.
What did the
on the
groundhog
forecast.
do? Do we believe in the Groundhog Day?
I don't know.
I think the hog came out. I think the groundhog stayed out, which means that it's going to be 80 degrees next week.
Oh, really? Oh, then we're playing golf next week?
We're playing golf next week. You're working on in the swing this week, mate?
I've been working a lot on thoracic mobility lately. So
how
I've got
have you
the
done
same.
That? And then how are you taking it to your swing?
Yeah, so it's something when I'm working on it, it's usually something I'm doing random points throughout the day. So not really tied to when I'm actually working out in the gym.
Okay.
I may wake up this morning, do a couple thoracic mobility exercises before I get on the scooter, head this way. I'll do a couple in between clients later, end of day, probably a couple more.
Now,
things.
I know you do them on the floor here. Do you do them on the floor in your apartment?
Yeah, I just do it like I get my feet up against the couch. I have just a specific way that I know for me in tax where mobility is restricted. And I've just been working on that for weeks now.
And now how's it feeling on the important stuff?
Yeah, so the big thing Scotty's had me working on is I like to get flat and turn with the face.
Flat meaning the
open.
angle of Sean's shoulders.
Yeah, so on my backswing, I'll turn like parallel to the floor more so than I would steep where there's the angle. Which
is interesting because Will Zalatoris this week said, one of our members SMS me and said, dude, everyone's talking about how you teach. It's a super steep angle of your shoulders because you're thoracically rotating.
And so I know physiologically why my tendency was to go the other way because I'm really tight and compressed on the right side of my thoracic spine. So I've been working on opening that up. So now my backswing feels much less manufactured and full of effort. Before I was like, I can feel where I'm tight. I've got to push through it to get the swing to look right. Now it's starting to happen a lot easier.
Very cool.
And then I find too, much easier than to trade those bends in the downswing and coming more inside consistently.
Yeah.
And it feels good. Like I feel for the first time in a while, now that I've had time to dedicate to this, I feel much more limber.
Yeah,
still a ways to go. But
do you think working on patience influences that? Or do you think this is years of injuries and...
I think a lot of the real stiffness is due to years of kind of injuries, cementing some bad postural habits, and then just enough time for it to get really stiff and tight. So in my case, I know my back's been tight for probably a couple decades.
Yeah.
And unpacking that takes a while. So to me, I understand, okay, this is going to be something if I dedicate a few months to this and every day, just chip away at it. 3 months time, when springtime's rolling around, I'm going to feel completely different.
Sure.
So my idea is like little bits here and there, instead of, once a week I spend an hour just on that and then I do nothing for the rest of the week and then do it again. It's every little moment I have to work on it, I'll just jump on the ground, stretch it out.
Sure. Yeah.
And chip away at it. So that feels good. I'm looking forward to getting back out there
again. We can't wait to play. I mean, this is something I wanted to circle back on. We talked about last week. I feel saturated with the PGA Tour. Why is New York so volatile in March with golf? Because we've been starved for 4 months. And that's what I think the PGA Tour, we don't want to harp on this too much, but I've been thinking about the statement, I talked about last week was, I think we should take away from the customer a bit of PGA Tour on TV so we can create some excitement.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, what would be a solution? Just quickly, I thought, well, why wouldn't we get back to how we used to do it, which was PGA Tour from a month before the Masters till November, players.
March to November, just like
FedEx
a season.
Cup season.
Yeah.
Then have the Corn Ferry guys take over from November, December, January, February, March. Give them 5 months where they're only on TV.
Yeah.
Now, it all comes down to naming rights sponsors and how this works, and I think a lot of golfers aren't quite sure. Someone like Windex. Windex says, right, I want to improve our brand and customer acquisition, so I'm going to dump 5 million. I don't know what the minimum is. I think it's about 5 million. So Windex say, well, they are PGA Tour, there's 5 million cash.
Yeah.
Then the juggernaut goes into overdrive and they create the Windex Open.
Yeah.
Windex will want Will Zalatoris and Hideki and Rory. Big names. So it'd have to be a conversation with the PGA Tour for lesser brands like a Swing who goes, well, I can't justify 5 million, but gee, I might be able to justify $1 million and we'll create some buzz. Maybe we won't get the eyeballs on TV like a Rory will, but it's also not costing me $5 million.
Yeah.
So the conversation, let's actually grow the game and give these Corn Ferry guys who are still amazing golfers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, Harrison, our mate who just got his PGA Tour card, shout out to Harry and Patos and the whole team there. Harry just busted his ass on Corn Ferry for several years, shooting 20 under. I mean, the guys are amazing.
It's crazy.
Let's give them more TV. Let's give them more money.
And there's a lot of good stories there.
There's a lot of great stories.
Like we're talking about, getting away from some of the old stories we've seen over and over again. There's a lot of really good ones, and I think you grow a lot of respect for those golfers who, I mean, sometimes it's just timing that holds them back from breaking through to PGA Tour and
100%.
whatever it is. But some of them are through the trenches. I've heard stories about guys sleeping in their cars, getting into a tournament the night before, flying overnight, getting there, not even having their clubs, that kind of stuff. Like the guys are really grinding it out. It's not all just roses and
it's not
on the PGA.
Again, so we could actually make the customer experience to ignite PGA Tour by taking a little bit away from it.
Yeah.
I mean, why is the Masters so brilliant? Is because we haven't had a major usually since about August. It's now changed. And so I just wanted to circle back on that. I think we should take away from, I don't want to see PGA Tour every week. It's so boring.
Yeah, I think it just becomes
saturated.
Saturated, and then less exciting when it's on again. Especially some of those lesser tournaments. It's just not quite the same.
Yeah, give these young guys, give the young up and coming a chance to shine.
Yeah, and the viewership's there. I mean, yesterday was President's Day in the city. Midtown is dead empty, but in here was buzzing. Everyone's in here hitting golf balls. So I mean, people are excited for it. And I know every week in here, every year in here, Masters Week is like the most energy in this office we see like all year.
It's
and
awesome.
Everyone's excited for it. So I think, like we said, we're not making any decisions, but
give me a prediction. Who you're liking? Hideki.
Yeah, I mean, he's done it once before.
He was interviewed and they said, how did you hit the ball? And he said, I didn't hit the ball great yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh, this afternoon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you've just shot 9 under. And actually, I don't know the lady's name, but she said, you just shot 9 under, dude.
Yeah. Tough to say. So Masters, we're going to have some of the live guys back, which is always interesting.
Koepka's been super quiet.
Yep. Yeah. Haven't heard much from him. Someone like Dustin Johnson,
just a freak,
could come out and really be in the mix. Or like, what about, is Bryson DeChambeau going to be in the Masters?
That's a great question. No, he won't be.
Suppose not, huh?
So it's a Masters is a smaller field. Generally, any Open's 144. Top 60 plus ties make the cut. Masters is 85 thereabouts. Depends on year to year with invites.
Yeah.
So there's one of the most prolific golfers, major winner, who's not going to be playing. I don't believe, unless he gets an invite. And this is where the monopoly takes over. So the men of the Masters can obviously invite. I would have thought they invited.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
I think so.
Then that's unfair to someone like Harrison Endicott, who might be just playing just as well, but who doesn't get an invite. So that's where it gets a little bit.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky.
It's a bit tricky.
Yeah, the fairness there when people can just make decisions.
I'd like to see Harry play the Masters or Will Zalatoris probably wouldn't make the Masters.
Yeah.
Although he won last year, so I don't know. That doesn't give him a Masters exemption.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So it's all a little grey because there's only one or two people controlling it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
Players should own their own tour.
Yeah.
I
think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, well, that probably does it for this week.
Yeah.
Some great talking about things. And again, everybody, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate the support. Keep telling people about it. And we'll be back in next week talking more golf.
And we're going to get playing. So look, beauty golfers, thanks for listening to Pivot the Path. And remember, your on-course enjoyment starts with the work you put into your entire game. You can absolutely own your swing. So keep swinging, keep moving that T-spine.
Yeah, keep training.
And I'll keep turning on my hammies.
Yeah, sounds good. Deal.